My girlfriend made fun of my low salary to her friends, so I doubled my income, blocked her, and let her watch me thrive from afar. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and for most of my life, I believed loyalty and hard work were enough in a relationship. I wasn't flashy, I didn't come from money, but I showed up every day with intention and heart. That's how I approached love, too. You don't need grand gestures or lavish vacations to prove you care. You just need to be consistent, steady, safe. That's who I was when I met Mia. She came into my life like a spark, beautiful, sharp, magnetic, the kind of girl that turned heads when she walked into a room. We met through mutual friends at a college event, and I remember thinking I had no shot. She had this confidence that intimidated me, but also made me want to rise to her level. To my surprise, she noticed me, said I was refreshingly real compared to the guys chasing clout or status. Back then, I was working part-time at a youth outreach nonprofit while finishing my degree. I was honest about it. It wasn't lucrative, but it made me feel like I mattered. Mia said she respected that, said I was the kind of guy women should want but rarely choose. "You're grounded," she told me once, curled up on my chest. "You make chaos feel calm." We moved in together 2 years later. By then, she was climbing the ladder in marketing, while I took on a full-time role at the nonprofit. We split rent, but I covered more of the day-to-day stuff, groceries, pet supplies, the boring expenses. I didn't mind. That's what love looks like, right? Partnership, balance, shared effort, or so I thought, because one night, while walking down the hallway toward the kitchen, I heard her voice drifting from the living room, laughter, my name, and a sentence that would stay with me forever. Honestly, it's like dating down. But he's sweet, so ideal. I stopped in my tracks and I didn't walk into the room. I just stood there, heart pounding, wondering who the hell I'd actually been building a life with. It was a Saturday night, and Mia had her 2 best friends over, Lena and Jess. They were loud, always sipping wine like they were on a reality show. Voices carrying through the thin walls of our apartment. I didn't mind, not usually. I'd gotten used to giving them space when they had their little girls' nights. I figured they needed it. I stayed holed up in our room with my headset on, playing some mindless online shooter. Just background noise, I told myself, just another night. But I wasn't really focused on the game. Something about their energy felt different, looser, more unfiltered. I heard glasses clink, laughter, the occasional shriek. When the match ended, I took off my headset to grab a glass of water. "That's when I heard it, girl," Lena laughed. "You could do way better than Mr. Minimum Wage." I froze mid-step in the hallway. My body turned to ice. "Mia, I know," she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "He's sweet, but let's be real, I'm dating down." Then, as if that wasn't enough, "It's kind of like a charity project at this point." They all laughed. It was sharp, cruel, like knives dipped in honey. I stood there, holding my breath in the hallway like a ghost in my own home. My mind went blank. I couldn't process what I was hearing. Not from her. Not from someone who'd held my face in her hands and told me I made her feel safe. That wasn't teasing. That wasn't a joke. That was humiliation, dressed up as wine night honesty. I turned around and walked back into the room without a sound. Sat down at my desk. Didn't even touch the water. The game I was playing before, it suddenly felt like the only war I wasn't losing. But something inside me cracked open that night, and it didn't close again. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept replaying her voice, the laughter, the way she said charity project, like it tasted good in her mouth. By morning, my chest felt tight, like all the air in the apartment had turned thick. She was in the kitchen making coffee when I finally walked in, trying to pretend I wasn't shattered. My voice cracked when I asked, "Do you ever feel embarrassed being with me?" She didn't even look surprised. She just gave me this soft smile, the one she used when she wanted to seem gentle, and leaned in to kiss my cheek. "Baby, you're being insecure," she cooed. "You must have misheard something. You take things too literally." Her tone was syrupy sweet, but it felt like poison sliding into my ears. I tried again. "Mia, I heard you. I know what you said." She rolled her eyes, sighed dramatically, and placed her mug on the counter like I was exhausting her. "I worked so hard to love you through your struggle," she said. "Don't make me regret being patient with you." There it was, the flip. The guilt, the implication that she was the one doing me a favor by loving me. I felt my throat tighten. She wasn't denying what she said. She was reframing it, making me question myself, making herself the victim. "I'm not trying to fight," I whispered. "I just want to understand," she snorted. "You're too sensitive. Honestly, you should be grateful someone like me even gives you a chance. Most girls wouldn't." That line hit harder than anything I'd heard the night before. Grateful. Lucky. Like I was some stray dog she'd taken pity on. I didn't argue. I just nodded, letting her believe she'd talked me down again. But inside, a quiet clarity settled. She didn't love me. She loved having someone beneath her. And for the first time, I wondered what would happen if I stopped staying beneath her. And that thought. It didn't go away. Mia made more than me by a lot. Her marketing job came with bonuses, expense accounts, and invites to influencer events. But somehow, I was always the one footing the bill when it came to anything public. Trendy restaurants, weekend getaways, birthday gifts for her friends, couples massages she'd casually book without even asking if I could afford them. And every time I so much as glanced at the price, she'd tilt her head, lips pursed, and say, "Don't be cheap." I can't show up like that tit reflects badly on me. At first, I convinced myself it was temporary, that she'd pay me back, that we were building a life together and things would even out. But she never offered. And I was too proud and too in love to ask. So I dipped into savings, skipped lunches, stopped buying anything for myself that wasn't absolutely necessary. I remember one weekend, we went to this rooftop lounge that charged $18 for a cocktail. She ordered 2 without blinking. I paid. She posted a boomerang of her drink, tagged the location, added a cheesy caption, "Catch flights, not feelings," not a single trace of me in any of her posts. I started noticing the pattern she'd crop me out, or take solo shots only. Designer bags, perfect lighting, all carefully curated to make it seem like she was living the high life. Solo, I brought it up once, gently, said something like, "Hey, you never post us together." She rolled her eyes. "Not everything's about you. It's called personal branding. You wouldn't get it." Her words slapped harder than she knew. It wasn't just that I was invisible online. It was that I was invisible to her except when my debit card was out. And that's when I started to really ask myself, was I her boyfriend? Or just her walking, talking wallet in a button-down shirt? Sam's been my best friend since we were 14, the kind of friend who will show up at 2 a.m. with food and 0 questions. He'd met Mia a few times and never said much beyond polite small talk. I always assumed he liked her well enough. But lately, he'd been quieter around me, like he was holding something back. Until one night at his place, over a couple of beers and a game we weren't really playing, he finally spoke. "Man," he said, eyes fixed on the TV, "you're disappearing. This isn't you. You're breaking your back for someone who mocks you." I blinked. "What are you talking about?" He looked at me for a long moment, like he was debating whether to say it. Then he pulled out his phone. "I didn't want to show you this," he said, "but you need to see it." He opened a group chat. I saw Mia's name at the top, mixed with a few of her work friends and that friend Lena I never liked. My chest tightened as I started to read. He wore those shoes again today. I swear he's allergic to style. That lunchbox job is cute though, like dating someone from a Disney Channel after-school special. He bought me flowers from a gas station. I should frame them for charity memories. I couldn't speak. My ears rang. These were my soft spots, things I'd told her about in confidence. How I'd always been self-conscious about money. How I tried to make thoughtful gestures even when I was broke. She took those moments and turned them into punchlines. I felt sick, humiliated, stripped bare. That was the moment something shifted in me. I'd been defending her for so long, clinging to the idea that love meant sacrifice. But this wasn't sacrifice. This was self-erasure. And I was done making excuses for someone who got laughs from my pain. I didn't say anything else that night, but in my head, I started planning my exit step by quiet step. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I didn't even let on that I knew what Mia had said behind my back. That would have given her too much power, another chance to flip the narrative. Twist it into how I was the problem. I was too sensitive. I was ungrateful. So instead, I did something unfamiliar. I got quiet. And I got busy. I picked up extra work wherever I could. Weekend tutoring gigs, freelance editing for nonprofits, even a few paid surveys online just to squeeze every dollar I could. Every free moment became a grind. I'd come home tired, but with a fire in my chest I hadn't felt in months. By night, I was teaching myself skills I'd always put off: data analytics, project management, marketing funnels. I watched YouTube tutorials on double speed. I signed up for cheap online courses. I started applying for remote jobs under a different email address she didn't know about. I opened a new bank account in a different credit union and started funneling everything I earned into it. Just a few hundred at first, then more. She never noticed, she never checked. In her mind, I was still that same dependable, grounded guy who'd never leave, never lie, never grow beyond her. But the truth is, I'd already started leaving her before I ever walked out the door. I stopped reacting to her passive jabs, stopped flinching when she compared me to her friends' wealthy husbands. I didn't argue when she rolled her eyes at my cheap taste. I just nodded, smiled, and saved it all. She thought my silence meant I was healing from insecurity, that I was finally learning to man up and accept her superiority. But what she didn't know, what she never imagined, was that I wasn't getting over my insecurities, I was getting over her. And she wouldn't realize it until I was already gone. 6 months. That's how long I spent living a double life: quiet boyfriend by day, relentless builder by night. There were times I wanted to scream, to throw my phone across the room from exhaustion, but I didn't. I kept my head down, my mouth shut, and my eyes locked on the goal. Then it happened. After a final round of interviews with a global consulting firm I never thought I'd even land a call back from, I got the offer. A full-time remote position, double my previous salary, with room to grow and flexible hours. I reread the email at least 10 times to be sure it wasn't a mistake. I could feel it in my chest, the shift. The power I had, slowly, quietly earned. I negotiated hard. For once, I didn't accept what was handed to me. I asked for more and got it. I remember closing that laptop, staring at the screen, and letting out this sharp breath I didn't know I'd been holding for years. I didn't tell Mia. Not yet. Instead, I started to upgrade the pieces of my life she used to mock. Got a new laptop, paid in cash. Subscribed to a gym, and actually went. Bought a few tailored shirts that fit me right. Replaced the scuffed sneakers she always laughed at. Everything was paid out of my hidden savings, and I never once dipped into our shared expenses. She noticed, of course. "Who are you trying to impress lately?" she said one night, sipping her wine and smirking. I didn't bite. I just smiled and said, "Myself." And for the first time in years, that was actually the truth. She thought it was cute, maybe even funny. She had no idea what was coming, but I did, and I savored it with every quiet, powerful breath. It was a Thursday night. Mia was curled up on the couch with a glass of red wine, giggling on FaceTime with one of her friends. I was walking back from the kitchen with a plate of leftovers when I heard my name, followed by laughter. I paused at the hallway corner, just out of view. I should have kept walking. I wish I had, but curiosity got the better of me. She held up the necklace I'd saved 2 weeks of tutoring pay to buy. It wasn't some brand-name designer piece, but it was elegant, personal. I'd had the pendant engraved with a phrase she once said she loved. Her friend asked, "Oh, did he get that for you?" Mia rolled her eyes and laughed. "Please, he can't afford this." I told him it was fake so he wouldn't ask questions. My hand tightened around the plate until it started to shake. It wasn't even about the money anymore. It was the way she said it, like I was a joke with legs, a dumb puppy who didn't need the truth because he was too poor to matter. That was it. The moment everything in me went still. No anger, no shouting, just a cold final clarity. I didn't wait for her to finish the call. I didn't give her a speech or ask for closure. I walked into the bedroom, pulled a duffel from the closet, and started packing clothes, laptop, toothbrush, the few things that were truly mine. I left the necklace box on the nightstand. I wrote a single line on a Post-it note and stuck it to her mirror. "Your charity project just became unavailable." I slipped out the door before midnight, blocked her number, every possible way back in. She didn't even realize I was gone until the next morning. By then, I was already out of reach. Moving out that night felt like jumping off a cliff without checking for a parachute. My heart pounded the entire drive to the short-term rental I'd booked under a new email. Every turn of the wheel felt like shedding a layer of fear I didn't even know I'd been carrying. But the second I shut the door behind me, just me, my bag, and silent sigh, exhaled like I hadn't in years. The apartment was small, unfurnished, no scent of lavender candles or echo of condescending laughter. But it was mine. No tension hanging in the air, no passive-aggressive comments, no tightness in my chest wondering what mood I was walking into. The first morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through bare windows and realized I wasn't afraid anymore. I started showing up for my own life. At work, I was sharper, more confident. I spoke up in meetings instead of second-guessing myself. My boss noticed. Within a few weeks, he asked me to lead a new project. Said he could tell I'd leveled up. He had no idea how right he was. I reconnected with old friends I'd drifted from, people who remembered me as me, not just me as shadow. We laughed without filters. No one made me feel like I had to apologize for existing. And every night, I looked in the mirror and saw someone I hadn't seen in a long time. Someone quietly powerful, someone free. I stopped playing small. Stopped shrinking so someone else could feel tall beside me. That habit had sunk its claws deep, but day by day, I peeled them off. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need her to hurt the way I had. All I needed was this feeling by peace, ownership, wholeness, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like I was surviving. It felt like I was living. It took 2 weeks, just 14 days of silence before she cracked. I was sitting on the balcony of my new apartment, sipping instant coffee and watching the city breathe below me, when the first message came in no number, no name. Just for words, "We need to talk." I didn't respond. A few hours later, another ping, "I miss you." I stared at the screen for a long minute, the edges of my mouth twitching. Not quite a smile, not quite a frown. By the next morning, she sent, "Are you seeing someone?" Then the final blow, "I heard you're doing well. Can we get coffee?" Ah, there it was. The curiosity, the entitlement, the scent of someone who had never believed I'd make it without her realizing. Too late that I already had. I didn't reply, not once. Instead, I posted a photo of me standing in front of the Eiffel Tower. I'd booked the trip impulsively, a little celebration for landing my new role and finishing my first project. In the picture, I'm laughing, wind in my hair, eyes squinting at the sky like, I belong in a different life now. The caption read, "Solo but soaring." Within 10 minutes, her new burner account viewed the story. Then the next, and the next. She watched every update I posted for the rest of that trip. I didn't block her. That would have given her closure, letting her see me happy, whole, and completely out of reach. That was better than any angry text or cold shoulder. He wasn't hiding anymore. She could look all she wanted, because the man she mocked, he didn't exist anymore. The months that followed were a blur of momentum and rediscovery. My new job turned out to be more than a paycheck. It was a launchpad. I got promoted within the first quarter, invited to lead a virtual panel for an international conference, and booked my second solo trip, this time to Kyoto. My weekends filled with new experiences, fresh faces, and the kind of laughter that didn't carry bitterness underneath. Asterisk, I started dating again, nothing serious. Just light, open, and free from guilt. For the first time in years, I felt like a man, not a burden, but Mia. She never really left. I noticed likes from suspicious accounts, ones with no profile photos, no followers, but always the first to view my stories. A few times, she commented on old pictures from our past life, using vague quotes like, "You were always going places," or "proud of who you're becoming." It was subtle, calculated, desperate. Friends began texting me things like, "Bro, Mia asked about you last night at Lena's thing. Said you switched up like she never existed." One even said she called me cold, said she felt discarded. I almost laughed, because the irony was thick. She hadn't missed me, she missed the version of me she could control. The quiet guy she could dress up and drag along like a prop, the man who begged for scraps of attention. That man was long gone, and I didn't need to clap back. My silence was thunder. My growth was the echo. My life had become the response to every insult she thought I hadn't heard. For once, I wasn't the invisible one in the relationship. I wasn't the charity case or the project. I was the one that got away, and she couldn't unsee it, Evan, if she never looked. Me in the eye, again, it was a random Thursday. During lunch break, when the universe decided to throw me a little bonus twist, I was in the break room with Jason. A newer hire on our team. Cool guy, good energy. We were trading weekend stories when he casually said, "Man, I went on the weirdest dates a few weeks back with this girl named Mia." I froze, coffee halfway to my mouth. I kept it casual. "Oh yeah, what was she like?" Jason shrugged. "Pretty for sure, kinda flashy. But honestly, all she did was talk about her ex. Like, nonstop. He said he abandoned her after he got rich. Made her feel worthless. She even cried at one point." I blinked, then chuckled an honest, belly-deep laugh I didn't expect. Jason raised an eyebrow. "What? You know her?" "Yeah," I said, sipping my coffee. You could say that I didn't get into it. Didn't unpack the months of emotional manipulation, the buried insults, the slow rebuild of myself. I didn't need to. The irony was gift-wrapped and delivered. She was out there spinning a sob story, painting herself as the tragic ex-girlfriend left behind by some heartless man who couldn't handle love once he had money. But the truth, I hadn't changed. I just stopped apologizing for being me. A week later, Jason told me he ghosted her, said the victim energy was a bit much. Just smiled, turned back to my work, and thanked karma under my breath. I never needed revenge. She was doing a fine job unraveling her own image, and this time, I wasn't the one being dragged through the deer time. Was the clean slate she couldn't rewrite. It had been months since I'd heard anything directly from Mia. The burner accounts had slowed down. The random likes on old photos stopped. I figured maybe she'd finally let it go, found someone else, or at least moved on. Then one night, as I was winding down after work, an email popped into my inbox. Her name in the sender field hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. The subject line was just, "I don't know where else to put this." Against my better judgment, I opened it. It was long, paragraph after paragraph of what sounded like vulnerability on the surface. She wrote about how she'd been struggling, said she'd lost her job after a toxic team culture turned on her, how the silence in her apartment had become unbearable, how she was going through depression and felt completely unseen. Then came the rewrite the part that made my stomach turn. She said I'd abandoned her during her lowest point, that I ghosted the one person who loved me most. She made it sound like I was the one who'd torn things apart, not the one she mocked, not the one she drained, not the man who walked out with a duffel bag and a broken heart. She ended it with, "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope you remember how much I loved you." That was always real, no apology. Just a soft attempt at rewriting the past, casting herself as the wounded heroine, not even to tell her off. I forwarded the email to myself, gave it one label: never again. Because some people don't miss you, they miss the version of you they could. Exploit. And when they can't control the narrative anymore, they rewrite it to soothe their own conscience. People think healing looks like rage or revenge, like a dramatic confrontation or some perfect Instagram-worthy glow. But for me, healing was quieter than that. It wasn't flashy. It was a long, slow remembering of who I was before she shrunk me to fit inside her idea of good enough. I don't hate Mia. I'm not angry anymore. Honestly, I don't even think about her most days. When I do, it's like looking at an old coat I used to wear, too tight, too heavy, not mine anymore. There's no bitterness left, just distance. She doesn't fit in the life I've built now. And it's not because I've closed the door out of spite. It's because the person she knew, the one who apologized for existing too loudly, who bent over backwards to be lovable, he doesn't live here anymore. I stopped measuring my worth by salary comparisons or how well I performed in someone else's storyline. I stopped chasing approval like it was oxygen. My peace didn't come from blocking hurt, it came from unblocking myself. From finally walking in rooms without bracing for insult or shame. Now, when I walk into meetings, I stand tall. When I speak, I don't say. When I'm alone, I'm not lonely. I'm centered. Growth is quiet. But funny thing is, the people who tried to dim your light, they hear it anyway. They feel it in the silence. In your absence, in the glow they no longer get to stand beside, especially when that silence echoes with success. I didn't need to slam the door on her. I just had to stop holding it open. And once I did, the entire world opened up in return. If you've ever sat across from someone who laughed at your job, your dreams, your worn-out shoes, if you've ever felt like the punchline to a joke you never agreed to be part of, Let me say this as clearly as I can. You are not less. The world has a cruel way of rewarding volume over value. The loudest voices in the room often sound the most convincing, even when they're wrong. And people who mock your effort, your hustle, your quiet kind of dignity. They're not better than you, they're just louder. Real love doesn't humiliate you in front of friends. It doesn't talk over you or talk down to you. It doesn't twist your tenderness into weakness. Real love holds you in your lowest moments and says, you're still enough. You don't need to change your bank account, your body, your voice, or your career just to be worthy of being treated well. You don't have to break yourself into pieces just so someone else can feel whole. The turning point in my life wasn't the job offer. It wasn't the plane ticket. It was the moment I stopped trying to prove I was worth it. Because you don't prove your worth by rising into their version of success. You prove it by refusing to shrink into their version of enough. So don't waste your energy chasing revenge or replies. Don't wait for an apology to close the chapter. Focus on your own elevation, your peace, your joy, your glow. Dash up. Because when you rise quietly and fully, they'll hear it anyway. And the best part, you won't even need them to. I still haven't blocked her. Not the new account she made. Not the one with the generic name and no profile picture. She watches everything: my stories, my posts, my travels, my tiny wins and big milestones. I see the views. I see the silent presence lingering in the background of my new life. And I let her. Not out of spite, not because I want to hurt her, but because some lessons don't need to be screamed. Some messages don't need to be typed out or shouted across phone lines. Some lessons are best delivered in silence. She gets front row seats to a version of me she never believed in. Every laugh I post, every new city I explore, every moment where I look alive and unburdened, it's a mirror. Not for revenge, but for reflection. For her to see what she tossed aside while chasing shallow things. I don't gloat. I don't send "look at me now" texts. I don't need to, because my life speaks louder than I ever could. She thought I was the one who needed fixing. The charity case. The guy she was settling for until someone better came along. But I was never broken. I was buried, and now that I've dug myself out, I don't rise to prove her wrong. I rise to prove myself right. So let them watch. Let every person who doubted you, mocked you, or tried to make you small watch. Not because they deserve your pain, but because you deserve your peace. And sometimes, the quietest kind of power is just letting them witness what they lost while you build what they never could.